call the October 20th North Huron Police Services Board meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda. North Huron Police Service Board hereby accept the agenda for the October 20th Police Services Board meeting as presented. Moved by Rick, seconded by Bill. All in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? None noted. Minutes to the previous meeting. So it was in your in the package that was presented that the resolution is the North Huron Police Services Board hereby adopt the minutes of the Police Services Board meeting held August 25th, 2020 as presented. Joan moves it. We have Rick seconding it. Is there any questions or comments to relates to those minutes? Not seeing any. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. No delegations. So moving on to the 6.1, which is the preferred date, day, and time for the meetings. So as of, it was noted the board would report back on at the October meeting what date, what day, and what time works best for the meetings. So normally it's a Tuesday. It's been a Tuesday for ever since I've known, and it's always been at 7 o'clock. The only reason it's been Tuesday, in essence, is usually because the council meetings fall on a Monday, and if there's a holiday, it falls on a Tuesday. So it usually would land on a Tuesday. A little different scenario is that the board meetings now are more quarterly than monthly. So usually we won't run into the problem where a council meeting will interfere with the meeting, I'm assuming, so, but we can always rearrange those as we need to. So
Tuesday is perfect for me because I have 2 other meetings throughout the month there, both on Tuesdays.
So Tuesday's okay?
The Tuesday, the third Tuesday of the month, or second last, is usually an issue, and that's what this is.
Okay.
Because I got a Legion meeting on that particular night, so I just shoved it over till tomorrow, but still.
So if we had it in the middle of the month, so if we had it off a council meeting, like so we had a council meeting, police, council, that would supersede that issue then.
So the reason we usually do that now is basically we publish those agendas on the same day, right?
Okay.
So we publish the agenda for the Monday's council meeting and the Tuesday's police board meeting
On Monday.
on the Friday,
Friday,
prior. And I know the OPP too, right now, we usually align the meetings with when you guys
Are able to.
prepare the detachment commander's report. So, and I think you guys usually get it to us in the middle of the month because based on the previous month's stats, and that gives you enough time to kind of wrap that up.
Sometimes we do end up with a tight turnaround to get the stats, and they're not quite accurate. So that's why we've given a little bit of extra leeway there. So, but we can, we're definitely open to whatever you suggest, and we can try and make things work.
It doesn't mean we can't move it.
No. Basically, the only restriction we would have is basically Monday evenings. Like, you could move the day to pretty much any day throughout the week, as long as it's not Monday evenings. You can move the time to whatever works best for you. Whether it's the only other committee that's really has an established schedule is our Economic Development and Recovery Committee. And basically, they meet on Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. So
But if
not
Tuesday,
likely to conflict either.
what I'm hearing, if Tuesday's okay, it's just from what I'm hearing from you, Rick. It's the week. It's the Tuesday, the second Tuesday, or the second last Tuesday in the month.
Right, and our other meeting in the Legion is the first Tuesday of the month, and on a long weekend, council always bumps me out.
Right. So, you know,
I can
again, the question is that we have quarterly meetings. There's nothing stopping us from having it the last Tuesday of the month.
The wait?
the last Tuesday of the month. So instead of, I'm throwing it out there. We're always gonna have
I mean,
somebody.
I can go along with it, and I would have to cancel one of my other meetings, but that's fine. I mean,
Well-
for what it would take, you know, I'm gonna miss one Knights Columbus meeting out of,
Yeah.
every 3 months.
But again, the argument is if I'm, no matter if I move, if we move to the last meeting and you're rescheduling, if I leave it alone, Rick's got to reschedule. So it really, I guess, at the end of the day,
Fight it out, guys.
yeah.
If I had a first vice, that person could take over for me, but my first vice quit.
Oh, at the Legion,
What does this gentleman, did he tell you what he wanted?
he didn't mention it. He would, Jim wouldn't know anything different other than Tuesday nights. So he would, when he applied, there were Tuesday nights
Right.
every month, Tuesday night, 7:00.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
they used to be every
Yeah, I
month.
know.
When we had the Wing Police Services,
It was,
or Wing and
yeah.
Police Services, every Monday or every
Yeah.
month,
Every month, yeah.
every third Tuesday. So unless, I guess, unless I'm hearing any different, I think I would suggest we just leave it alone. What about time? Is 7:00 great? Is
Fine,
Fine for me.
better earlier, or find where it is?
When I was on the board, we had it at 4:00 in the afternoon, and that was kind of hard to get away from work and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that's not gonna work for me.
7's fine with me.
I don't, any time is fine. I'm not gonna-
Seven's good.
Okay. I just know council's at 6 and it's pushing it.
Yeah.
It's pushing it for me. I'm racing to get here from Lister.
Oh, okay, do you want to,
Okay.
7 is fine. 7 is fine. I'm just we've moved our council meetings from 7 to 6.
oh,
So to alleviate some of the public being here till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, that's really why we moved it. So it was just more of a question to you guys. If you're okay with 7 o'clock, I'm fine with 7 o'clock. I'm assuming the OPP have no concern of what time it is.
Absolutely, you, according to whatever your plan, works for the majority. And,
So based on that, I would just say we're going to leave it at status quo, and we'll record the calendar of what that meetings are going to be. Effectively after tonight, the meetings will be, until further notice, they will be in the Town Hall Theater.
upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah. So council has decided to open, to get a larger space to allow public, due to the COVID restrictions and stuff. So as you have told in the last 2 meetings, this is not usually a fairly lively public meeting.
You'll use the stage in the other.
Correct. That's correct. So this is not normally a lengthy public forum anyways, and at the end of the day, we have it streamed for the public that wishes to see it. So, but the council has decided to move it there for council meetings, then all other meetings are just gonna follow suit. Okay. Okay, I will move on to 7.1, and Dave Cinco, from the OPP, I'd like you to go through your detachment report, please.
Mr. Chair. So this report does encompass both August and September. So I will start on your first page, and we can look at our calls for service year over year in the comparison. And this is a combination of the 2 months together. So in 2020, we're looking at 168 calls for service, and that is down from 2019 when we stood at 201. So public complaints and secondary employment, nothing to report there. And into DAR, community safety mobilization hours. And again, as stated in the past, these are hours above and beyond your calls for service. And the breakdown being as follows: your cruiser patrol hours at 248 3/4, foot patrol at 8.5, school patrol hours at 4. Again, obviously with the increase now with the kids back to school, so you'll see an increase there. Specialized patrol hours are at 0. Focused patrol hours are at 4, and we did have some focus patrol with regards to, I believe it was a speeding issue, and then in and around the schools before school startup, and familiarization for the public to have that understanding that we're out and about and the kids were headed back. Community mobilization hours are 2, ride program hours at 5 1/4, and auxiliary hours we still have here not applicable COVID-19. So we still not have brought our auxiliary unit back online full time, if you will. They are available for specialty functions, be it home assessments and things like that for security measures. However, they're not patrolling with our officers because of the nature of doubling up in the close proximity and so on and so forth with COVID-19. So, but we do hope to bring that back. Hopefully things swing in our favor and we can get them back sooner than later. Detachment initiatives and number of targeted media releases. You can see there's 3 releases pertaining to Wingham for the months of August and September. Crime and traffic campaign initiatives. 5 motor vehicle collisions in Wingham in August and September. 4 were very minor property damage, and 1 was what we consider a personal injury involving a car and a bicycle. So the cyclist, and my understanding is minor injuries in that as well. Public education campaigns, and this is 25 releases issued, and that's across the county, so that should say not this month, but the 2 months inclusive. And with regards to public education and the different campaigns that have been going on, obviously those are designed to obviously inform the public on current crime trends, how to better protect themselves, target hardening, different tips and things that come out from our office. As you can see with Crime Stoppers, 32 total tips, new OPP tips I should say, and that is for the county. 8 of those being drugs and 24 intelligence. Continuous learning, so block training resumed in September, and this is our mandatory annual training, so I can speak to that a little bit more. Last week I was on the training for the Monday and Tuesday. It's usually a 4-day training where we go through everything from firearms to self-defense, our conducted energy weapon recertification. So that would be a 4-day training session, and with the restrictions of COVID-19, all of that training got shut down. So bringing us back online, they've reduced it to a 2-day session so they can get more members trained per week, and they're going through the basics of, I would say that the mandatory qualifications to get everybody up to speed. So that would be your firearms, CEW training, and your self-defense, and so on and so forth. So it's 2 full days, I can tell you that. Community engagement, school youth officer hours and calls for service. We don't have any incidents listed for August or September. Obviously August, kids weren't back yet at any of the North Huron schools. Schools reopening and somewhat guarded as well. Still with the COVID-19, our school resource officer has been brought back from frontline platoon back to the schools, and obviously you can see is re-engaged with the schools. There's ongoing talk with the schools about how that looks and how the presentations might occur. Some school boards are welcoming us back in, and others are wanting to do things remotely. So it's a learning curve. I know everybody's moved towards a social media type platform for training, and that's occurring in some schools throughout the province as well. However, everything I've observed locally is we've been welcomed back to the schools, and but things are still just starting to ramp up when it comes to those training sessions. Our community mobilization officer, Joanna Van Mierlo, she's returned to the weekly meetings, the situation table meetings in Seaforth. And those are meetings where we discuss concerns about the high-risk population in Huron County. Our mobile crisis response team member, he is riding with our officers right now, assessing and supporting the front line at mental health calls for service in the field. So We had 6 mental health calls in Wingham in 2020 for this time period of the report, and on par with 6 calls the same time in 2019. So as I had mentioned earlier, one of our focus patrols was in the schools, or in and around the schools, I should say, with regards to school safety and driver awareness. So we're patrolling on foot, by cruiser, and in an attempt to curb some driving behaviors and ensuring the safety of the students. So, under community events, unfortunately, this still shows nothing scheduled, and that's a direct result of COVID-19, and I can say that that's been across the county for the entire time, so that hasn't changed. Moving to the next page, in noteworthy occurrences, and just some bullet points on things that have gone on here. We do have a 29-year-old male pastor at a local church charged with 14 charges relating to sexual offenses, all with relating to minors. That individual was currently released on bail and residing outside of the community. We have a 31-year-old male that breached his release order by having contact with his domestic partner, arrested and charged with the violation. 25-year-old male charged with shoplifting from the Red Apple. 32-year-old female driving motor vehicle in Wingham while under suspension, stopped and charged accordingly. And another 50-year-old male, I should say, found in Wingham while on conditions not to be in Huron County, charged with breach of conditions. So you can see some of the charges that we're showing are related to offenses while upon release and conditions of those release. So trends looking forward, and again, this will review some of the numbers that you're going to see in the charts in the coming pages. But no reported assaults during August, September 2020, down from 4 the same time period in 2019. 3 reported sex assaults during this time period. This is up from 0 in the same time period in 2019. Property crime shows a decrease from 10 theft occurrences in August, September 2019 to 7 in August to September 2020. And you can see our break and enter occurrences, 2 during this year, down from 3 in 2019. So I would say on par. Obviously the numbers are not great, but there's not a significant change in those. We still have our members continuing to patrol businesses and industrial areas after hours and on weekends to deter criminal activity. Some of our detachment pressures, obviously COVID-19 pressures with our corporate planning and preparation ongoing changes to procedures and legislation. It seems like at the height of it, we were getting changes coming out daily. We are still getting them quite frequently, as I'm sure everyone is well aware, and making sure our members are on par with those and engaged. So a lot of questions from the public across the county as to what's allowable with regards to limits and social events and so on and so forth. Again, just speaking to our school resource officer, I will reiterate what I've spoken to there already. And some community pressures, obviously COVID-19, focusing on education while ensuring the safety of the public, proactive patrols again. I can say that in the entire county, we've only had 3 occurrences relating in charges, but we were over 300, I believe was the count as of Monday, just over 300 that were COVID-related occurrences. So it could simply be a call for service where someone has a question. It could be a party where there's too many people at the party, or it could be some of the Health Canada information that we are receiving for people returning from travel, where we are doing compliance checks for their self-isolation time period. So we are getting those, and it seems like we're getting those quite frequently now. So Canada Border Services is getting the people coming back into the country. Health Canada gets engaged, and then they generate these reports that we follow up on and report back. So, and I had mentioned staying current on the changing rules as we, in some areas tightening back up restrictions, where luckily we are in the same situation and hopefully getting better as we move forward. So. If you look at the next pages again, I won't reiterate the numbers, everything that I've spoken about here has come from these charts. It just simply is a more visual aspect of the different things, obviously violent crime, property crime, and drug crime. You can see that with drug crime, again, the numbers aren't great. Year over year, not a lot of change, I should say. I'd like to just mention some of the good work that was done with our community street crime team, with that in Grey Bruce as well, and South Bruce. They executed a warrant just within the past few days where they seized $100,000 worth of methamphetamines. So I'm sure you probably saw that in the news releases. Quite disturbing that amount of meth would be in our, what I would call home, you know what I mean, to have it in our backyard. But we do have to realize that it is there, and our community street crime unit is working day and night, taking those drugs off the streets and taking those individuals into custody. So kudos to them and the great work they've been doing. So just moving into the next pages, there be our calls for service billing summary report. And obviously, as I like to mention when we get to it, is the bottom line. When you look year over year, and again, this is year-to-date weighted hours, and on the left-hand side is your 2020 hours at 2,549, and 2019 at 2,561. So you couldn't be very much closer than that when it comes to the overall hours. So. And then on your last page, and again, I've inputted the data there for the last 2 months for August and September. You can see your call count on the end, and then your obligated duty hours, and that in comparison with North Huron as well, and then the combination. So, heading any questions? That's the report for those 2 months.
Thanks, David. Is there any questions from board members as it relates to the detachment commander's report? The one thing that I did want to, where did I see that question? I had a question. I was, when it talks about trends,
Yes.
so I understand we usually look at the prior year. Like, so we're, like in this particular case, it's usually year over year.
Exactly.
When we talk about trends as it relates to, you know, violent crime, drugs, and those types of things, is there statistics that indicate when in an area where it's more likely to have those types of crimes and when? Like, I know obviously it's, you know, winter time's different than summertime and those type of things, but I like to compare crime statistics the year over year sometimes can become not as forgiving as where we are trending from the year, in the sense are you might start the year with a whole bunch of crime, and then near the end of the year you're starting to go the opposite way, and you don't really see that trend as itself. So I really wondered if you could comment to that. I guess my question is that it's really just a comment is to see people. It's always the question is, do we live in a safe place? And I would argue that yes, we do live in a safe place in North Huron and in Wingham in a sense. The question is the incidents that are occurring aren't the same as they were 15 years ago.
Yeah. So, and you can see where I've mentioned the number of calls for service and the trending downwards.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's many factors that come into play with that. COVID-19 is one of them. You know, there are still people that would rather stay at home than be out and about. does that have effect on our calls for service? In a way, it can affect us with a negative trend, but we also have where numbers may trend upwards as well. The domestic-related violence calls for service, maybe some alcohol-related events, impaired driving, things like that, that may be on the increase because of COVID-19. So when we're talking about trends here, and we're looking at year over year, when we're looking at the variation and the change there, you're absolutely right, that's one aspect. Can we look at a wider gamut to see, because we can have that anomaly where, you know what, we have an individual in the community that commits several break and enters in January, and then you're looking at year over year and you're saying, wow, we're up 300%. Well, that's because of one individual. And likewise, as I have mentioned in the past, when it comes to clearance rates, you can arrest one individual and clear multiple occurrences with that as well. So, looking at the bigger picture, it's something that we ultimately do through our analysts, and we try to look at quarterly to predict where we might see increases, be it driving offenses, be it break and enters, but they are all have a correlation to what's currently happening in the community as well, be it COVID-19 or we could have a weather event, we could have something else that we might predict that the numbers may increase on a certain thing, but they may increase in traffic collisions because of an early snowstorm. So we like to look at it in trending year over year, so it's a snapshot in time, and when you can say specifically that we are increasing or we're decreasing, and that's how we're trending at this point. So hopefully I've answered your question there.
Absolutely,
Mr. Chair.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, and also I guess I want to make a comment in the sense that we talk about calls for service. I was on the Wingham Police Services Board when it was the Wingham Detachment. Generally speaking, I'm noticing from memory that our calls for service are actually down month over month. Like we were pushing 100 calls for service every month, and that would include the calls to service to go to OPP areas and vice versa as reciprocation would have occur. But we were pushing 100 calls for service every month, and Rick, I'm sure you can recall some of those as well. But I know that. So in a trend, in a call for service perspective, I think we're trending in the right direction, because obviously the intention is if you have a call, you want them there. If you don't have a call, is there a need for them to be in the area? You'd rather them servicing another call than being parked somewhere and not servicing a call.
And obviously, not to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but obviously without that call volume, officers' time can be dedicated to other areas as well, or other issues that we might look at. And when we look at those trends, if we talk about maybe intersection-related collisions, and they tend to peak at a certain time of the year, members can focus on those certain things. Hence, where we bring in focus patrols and different strategies to mitigate those as well. So, and I can tell you, it's very officer presence goes a long way. And we talk about something like I just mentioned, intersection-related collisions, where we have a cruiser in the area, and someone might see that, and they have a heightened awareness, then it may decrease the occurrence of a collision at an intersection because they're stopping.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's the positive benefit to the officer in the area as well. I can appreciate that. If the calls for service go down, maybe we can increase in other areas as well. But we still maintain calls for service in surrounding areas as well. So,
Absolutely. Rick?
Through you, Chair, in regards to CHIP, we got a cutout constable purchased. It's not deployed yet.
yeah,
For the same thing you're just saying.
absolutely. So there's different strategies and different things that can be utilized. So You know, and
We haven't quite utilized the little old lady with the hair dryer yet, sitting on the, or the grandpa or myself sitting on the highway with a hair dryer.
It's funny you mention that, because I've spoken to people that say down in St. Paul's was actually when I was in Perth County, and I'd always go out to a certain area there and spin around and watch, monitor traffic, and she'd come out and say, I got my hair dried. She says, we sit on the front porch Saturday afternoons and you should see the brake light, she says. So, anyways, we joke about it,
But again, I think
some of them have calming effects.
But I think ultimately, I think my comment was really too is exactly that, is that there is lots of proactive work that's being done to reduce calls for service before you even get them.
That's correct.
So
That's
I think that and this isn't, and I continue to keep saying this. This is no shot at what the Wingham Police Service was able to accomplish, but we don't have the resort. We did not have the resources that enabled them to do the types of the proactiveness in the community that the OPP are able to do outside of their normal thing. They were dealing with calls for service. Let's call a spade. That's what they were dealing with, and that's what they had to deal with. So I think ultimately, in my mind, the calls for service are what they're going to be, but that proactive approach is going to help us in the future with determining, before we even get a call. The one thing I did want to ask you too is how, because of the coronavirus and COVID-19 and how that has seemed to have affected some communities, every community in the sense of in Ontario, how has mental health calls, I know the numbers, but how is that being perceived, I guess, because I read it all the time. Mental health and physical stuff is a big deal nowadays, but you don't hear a lot about how is it actually in the community. Like when we talk about the calls for service, you said, like I said, I think it was like 6, but we had 6 last year. So
Exactly. So in comparison, Mr. Chair, and I think I touched on it a little bit, was do we see an increase in alcohol use, in some maybe domestic related calls for service, things of that nature, where people are staying home more hours out of a day, or with their significant other more hours in a day. We do have, like I said, there's I don't want to use the term more opportunity for things like that to occur, but they are occurring. Are the numbers significant to show locally to show a great increase there? No. But are they decreasing? I would say they're not. It's very difficult to say that COVID-19 has a direct impact on this call for service or this call for service. However, if we were not affected by the coronavirus and what has gone on over the past few months, may we have seen a decrease in those calls for service? I think it's quite possible. And I know there's probably going to be studies going on for months to come to see how it actually affected the well-being of everyone outside of, like I said, alcohol or domestic related occurrence, but a long-term mental health well-being as well. So there's no doubt in my mind it has an effect on people, and we are seeing certain things. But with the help of our mobile crisis response team member, a lot of those initial calls, as opposed to an apprehension under the Mental Health Act or some other mitigation where they need to go to the hospital and they ultimately are released there, sometimes it's a phone call and they can get the help without going to the hospital situation or facility, I should say. And that's where we see the savings in officer time, in dollars through the hospital, without the visit to the emergency department, and so on and so forth. So that is an excellent program. And again, I think it's far-reaching. I'll leave it at that. But I think the COVID-19 situation is far-reaching and has a grasp on a lot of calls that we deal with in policing.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions, that the motion here is that the North Huron Police Services Board hereby approves the detachment commander's report for October 20th meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Bill moving it. I have a seconder. I have Joan seconding it. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move down to 9.1 in correspondence. Is there anything on this letter from the Solicitor General that anybody would like to talk to? I know there is one thing that I would like to mention, but if there's any questions before I had asked, I would.
It's pretty in-depth.
They got a lot going on.
Yeah.
No, there was one, when I read this over, they're going to run courses for all boards. Did I read that?
Mandatory.
And it's
Yes.
mandatory.
So,
So,
yeah.
is that course is run by the town, or is it run by mental health? Is it run by?
So that is part of a larger picture of where the Ministry of the Solicitor General hopes to be. So as you'll have seen in there, basically they've developed the Community Safety and Policing Act, which is part of the whole comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act. And as part of that, one of their initiatives is to restructure police boards so that they're developed around detachments as opposed to municipalities. So where they're intending to move towards is basically you'd see a board with representation from each municipality on one board that might align with the detachment, or there might be a couple boards for a detachment depending on the size of that detachment area. And the intention of that is for municipalities who are currently section 5.1 municipalities, so they don't hold a contract with the OPP. Basically, it's to give them better representation and a better connection to the OPP. So that's where they're going ahead with that. And so what that's going to do is that's really going to change the role of police boards with the new legislation coming in. So that training would be referring to anyone who's sitting on the board. The expectation is that they would be given that kind of training on, and I'm assuming it's what their role is on the new legislation, that kind of thing. But by all means, that from the consultation session that I last went to, which was in February, none of that had been fleshed out yet on the details of who would be providing the training, all that kind of thing.
I suspect before any training would be required mandatory would be it would be written in the regulations as it relates to whatever new structure the board would be in. So as a board member today, there is board training that is highly recommended but not mandatory. And I think what they're trying to accomplish is to ensure that every board member has the same training, regardless of whether they're from Exeter or Wingham or Blythe or whatever. The intention is that, I think also what they're trying to do is kind of try to amalgamate a lot of these meetings that the OPP are being summoned to, in the sense that majority of us in this particular era hold the OPP, and Dave and the detachment commander are going to multiple meetings when they're probably could be having one.
And it is, like in Wellington County, is a perfect example of one board, where you see everyone at the table, and they
It
go
makes
through
more
it
sense.
Yeah,
at one
totally.
point, so,
Yeah, so one of the things they have to work themselves through is all these boards have different contracts. So part of that discussion is how does everything get flushed out in these transitional contracts, because that's what we have in Wingham is a transitional contract. So we would have to our contract would have to be eliminated and be given a same contract or a contract that they would require. So there would no longer be their transitional contracts is what they're indicating.
through you, Chair, to the board. Yeah, so under this new legislation, the expectation is that basically they would do away with contracts completely.
Right.
So right now, we technically hold a Section 10 contract, but they kind of consider it as a transitional contract, as Chair Sipe said, but the expectation is that any Section 10 contracts would be done away with completely.
Right. Not easy bookkeeping.
Is there anything else that the board would like to talk to about on this correspondence? Okay, I would take a mover for the North Huron Police Services Board hereby directs the correspondence be ordered, read, and filed. I have Rick moving that, and I have Joan seconding it. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and we don't have any new business. There's nothing, no public here for public comment. There is no closed session. So the next meeting we've got scheduled is for December the 15th at 7 o'clock in the North Huron Town Hall Theater. It will be in the Town Hall Theater, based on what I understand. If there is no further business before the North Huron Police Service Board meeting, I hereby adjourn at 7:42. Do I have a mover of that? Bill moves it. Do I have a seconder? Rick? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.